Teaching Entrepreneur Association, and I wanted to welcome you to this video, which today is all about differentiation, or should I say the basics of differentiation, because differentiation is such a huge topic to go through. So I thought what I would do is look at what differentiation actually is and also how we can use it in our teaching. Differentiation, whenever I think of the word differentiation or I hear it, I think different. So that's what I want you to kind of think of. Whenever you hear differentiation, I mean, it's a big word and it can be so complicated, or people think it can be so complicated because there's so many different ways to do it. Today, we're just going to look at two of those ways. And the two ways that we're going to look at, first is ability. So what can people do and what can't they do? And how do we allow for that in our classes? And the second way is regarding differentiation by disability or learning difficulties and disabilities, and how we can support our learners that have those conditions. But the first thing I want to say about differentiation is to remember that all our students are different. In fact, we're all different, but we're all unique. We're all really special people. And when a student comes to your class, what I want you to think about is how you can help them to learn to the best of their ability. And that can be really difficult when you think about it, because, you know, imagine you've got a group of students. So you've got 12 students in a class, and you've got, say, 4 at one end who don't really know anything about what your subject specialism is. Then you've got, in the middle, you've got 5 or 6 learners that know a little bit, but not a huge amount. And then you've got those in the other end of the scale who know loads of stuff. They know so much about what you're teaching them. So how do you cater for all these abilities? How do you make sure that everybody's included in every lesson so that they can learn, as I said, to the best of their ability? It's quite a tall order, isn't it? So, looking at ability today, oh, there's a plane going over. Somebody going off on holiday, which I was. Anyway, so how do we cater for all of those abilities? Well, imagine this is your class, okay? You're teaching maths. Okay, you may not like maths too much, or you may love it, but imagine you're going to be teaching maths. You have got this class I described, some who know a little bit, some who don't. But the topic that you're going to teach them today is their times tables. So you've got some that probably don't know their times tables, but they're practicing learning perhaps 3 times 6 or 5 times 2 or 6 times 6. So they're in your first group. In the middle group, you can still do times tables, but notch it up a level. So they will be learning perhaps 78 times 8. So they know the basics of what 7/8 are, but you're notching it up a level by giving them what we call short, in England, we call it short multiplication, or we did when I was at school. So that would be short multiplication. So you're doing something different for your first group than you're doing for your second group. And then when we get to the third group, these are the ones that know quite a bit. You're going to give them long multiplication. So this is really much more difficult one. So you might be using, say, 5,236 times 481. So can you see that they're all doing the times tables, but they're all doing it at different levels? And this is what we've got to try and achieve in each of the classes that we run. So how do we sort of do that for each individual class? I can't tell you for everybody because I don't know the subject area that you're going to be doing, but I can give you another example. I taught computing, that was my subject. So when we're teaching computing, we'll have some people that come along that know nothing, some in the middle and some that know quite a bit. So how am I going to cater for all of those? What I do is start the class by saying to the ones that don't know anything, and the ones that know something, and the ones that know a lot, First of all, we're going to switch the machines on. And those that know quite a bit, I'll get them to support the ones that don't know quite a bit, because there's no better way to learn than to have to teach somebody else how to do it. And obviously I'll supervise it to make sure they do it correctly. And as time goes on, I'll give them exercises. And a fascinating experiment, if you like, that I did was where I got some students I got some exercises rather that were quite basic. I had some that were in intermediate and some that were of a more advanced level. And I put all three piles on the tables, and I said to my students, help yourself, whichever exercise you want to do. These are the beginners, these are the intermediate, and these are the more advanced. And do you know what was really interesting was that every student went for the easy ones first, then went for the middling, and then went for the more advanced. So I thought, I know, I'll try it a different way. I did one exercise, and I started off where the questions were quite easy at the beginning. Then they got a little bit more difficult, and then even more difficult. And the students in the class loved that because everybody was doing the same exercise. Nobody felt uncomfortable because, you know, some were doing something that was more advanced than they were, and, you know, this feeling of not being very bright or whatever. It didn't matter in that class because everybody was doing something. So there are different ways that you can differentiate by ability, and I've given you a couple there that I hope will help you. So let's move on now and look at disabilities and how we're going to allow for people's individual learning difficulties and disabilities. So I want to start with a little story. In my computing class, I had a gentleman who was, I think he was in his late 80s, and the chap had really bad arthritis in his hands, and he was struggling to move the mouse. He found it quite small and difficult to move. So I thought, I know what to do. I'll get him a big mouse. We've got some that are like tennis ball size. So the tennis ball rolls around in the mouse, and they've got big buttons on the front. So it's exactly the same as a normal mouse, but it's got buttons that he could press. And I thought this would be perfect for him. So off I went, got the big tennis ball mouse ready for the next session. And I was all proud of myself, came in, plugged it in, and I said, there you go, you've got a big mouse now and you'll be able to use it. He refused to use it, and I didn't think. I should have done. I didn't think. I was in my early days of teaching, and I thought, well, this is perfect for him. Why doesn't he use it? He wouldn't use it because he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed that he had to use one like that, and everybody else in the class used the normal ones. I felt so bad. I thought, oh my goodness, what am I thinking? So from that day onwards, whenever a student comes to me, or I'm aware of the fact that they have a learning difficulty or disability, the first thing I always do is ask them, how can I help you? How can I support you through this class with your condition? Because after all, they've probably lived with it most of their lives. So a couple more learning difficulties or disabilities, and I thought I would share some with you. So think about people who are in wheelchairs. I've had several classes that I've been to and seen people in wheelchairs. And one of my fellow teachers actually said to me an interesting story similar to my own. She'd allowed for somebody that was in a wheelchair to come and sit in her creative writing class, and she'd arranged the space right by the door, thinking that it would be easy for the wheelchair to get in and that somebody could sit straight away in the class. Well, this student came along several weeks and everything seemed to be going fine. And then one day, this student said to the teacher, do you know what, I'd like to sit over there rather than just here. Why didn't we think of that? You know, why should somebody have to sit in a certain place? Why can't they choose wherever they want to go, the same as everybody else? It's a bit of a learning curve, you know. You just don't think of that. So it's little tiny things that we can do to support our learners. So let's think about a learner that is hard of hearing. So automatically, I would move them, having asked them first, move them to the front of the class, because then they're near me and they can hear. Another thing I would do is make sure my lips are always, can you hear me? Not can you hear me, but can you hear me? So that they can lip read and can hear by looking, if you like, at my lips. If you've got somebody who's partially sighted, you might want to make the exercises or the board have much bigger font sizes so that they can read them more easily. Somebody with dyslexia, it's quite a big one, dyslexia, because there are so many different types of dyslexia. But you could support someone, first of all, by knowing what they need by asking them. But it may be different coloured handouts, handouts on perhaps cream coloured paper with blue ink. I was teaching somebody and I had the background was green, and he said it looks to me like grass that's waving in the wind. So it's about asking them what's the best colours for them, what helps them, what supports them. It might be coloured slides that you can put over their writing or over any books or anything so that they can read it easier. All of this is differentiation, and there are so many other different types, or different ways, should I say, of differentiating, from questioning to the pace of the class to all sorts of different things. And in a later video, I will go through some of those in a little bit more detail for you, so that you can hopefully start to practice some of these in your own teaching. So to come back to what we've been talking about, differentiation, think different. Just that word, different. What can I do differently for some groups of learners or individual learners so that I can support them to learn to the best of their ability and to make them feel inclusive in your class, so that they want to come along because they know that you know and can support them. One thing actually that I didn't say is about learning difficulties and disabilities. Sometimes students don't tell you. And so it's very difficult then to plan anything in advance if they don't tell you. Last time we were talking about our initial assessments. They may tell you about their learning difficulty or disability, but they may not. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. But if you know all of this, having done your initial assessment, you can then put this into your planning, into your lesson plans, and then put it into your teaching. So I hope this has been useful to you, and that you'll be able to put some of this into action.